Tessa Monroe? No way. Madison Blake stood beneath the gray Chicago sky in a cream-colored wool coat, her designer sunglasses pushed into her hair even though there was no sun. Rain tapped against the pavement in thin, freezing needles. Behind her, a black SUV idled near the curb with its hazard lights blinking like it owned the street. Tessa Monroe looked up from the sizzling flat-top grill inside her breakfast food truck. For half a second, she did not recognize the woman laughing at her. Then she saw the sharp cheekbones, the perfect blowout, the phone already rising in one manicured hand. Madison. Pause short. And beside her, stepping carefully around a puddle in heeled boots, was Olivia Grant. Tessa had not seen them since college graduation. Back then, they had stood together in white dresses under a bright May sun, holding diplomas from Lakeview Business Institute, promising each other they would all become somebody. Madison had said she would be on magazine covers. Olivia had said she would marry well and live peacefully. Tessa had said she would build something of her own. Now Madison was staring at the food truck as if it were a crime scene. "You graduated with honors," Madison said, lifting her phone higher. "And you're selling egg sandwiches on a sidewalk?" Olivia let out a small laugh. Not loud, not cruel enough to own, just enough to belong to Madison. Tessa stood there in a black apron stained with coffee, butter, and flour. Her hair was tied back. Her hands smelled like onions, hot oil, and cheap dish soap. A line of office workers waited under umbrellas, pretending not to listen. Madison stepped closer. "No, this is actually inspiring," she said into her phone camera. "Girls, stay in school, but also manage expectations." Tessa turned off the grill. Pause short. The sudden quiet inside the truck felt louder than the traffic. Madison smiled. "What? Nothing to say?" Tessa took a towel from her shoulder, wiped her hands slowly, and looked Madison straight in the eye. "Be careful, Madison," she said. "Sometimes the place you laugh at is exactly where someone else gets saved." For 1 second, Olivia stopped smiling. Madison did not. She laughed harder, tapped her phone screen, and said, "That's perfect. I'm posting that." Then she typed the caption while Tessa watched. "This is why a degree doesn't save you from failure." Pause medium. Madison thought she had filmed Tessa's lowest moment. She had no idea she had filmed the place where a billionaire's missing son would be found. And by the time the whole city learned the truth, the woman Madison mocked on a freezing sidewalk would be standing on stage beside one of the most powerful men in America. While Madison sat in the audience with tears in her eyes, realizing the life she had bragged about was the one falling apart. Pause medium. But before that night came, Tessa still had to survive the morning. She turned the grill back on. One of the men in line cleared his throat and said, "Can I still get the cheddar biscuit?" Tessa forced her hands not to shake. "Yes," she said. "Extra hot sauce?" "Please." She cracked another egg. Outside, Madison and Olivia climbed back into the SUV, laughing as if they had just collected a trophy. Tessa did not watch them leave. She had learned long ago that humiliation only becomes permanent when you stop moving. So she moved. She wrapped sandwiches, poured coffee, counted change, smiled at strangers who did not know her name. And when the rain slid down the truck window like tears she refused to cry, she whispered the same thing her mother had told her 100 times. Late is not lost. Pause medium. But that morning, even Tessa did not know how badly she would need to believe it, because Madison's video did not disappear. Pause short. It spread. By sunset, the girl who used to sit in the front row of every finance class, the girl professors called brilliant, the girl everyone thought would end up in a corporate tower overlooking the Chicago River, had become a joke in alumni group chats. Didn't she graduate top of the class? From honors student to breakfast truck? Life humbles people fast. This is why I don't romanticize entrepreneurship. Pause medium. Tessa saw the comments that night after she closed. The food truck was parked in a small, rented lot behind a laundromat on the south side. The city lights flickered on wet asphalt. A train rattled in the distance. Inside the truck, the air still smelled like bacon, cinnamon, and burned coffee. Her younger brother, Caleb, sat on an overturned crate doing homework on his laptop. He was 17, tall and thin, with headphones around his neck and the kind of anger young men carry when they realize the world can insult someone they love and still sleep peacefully. "Give me her profile," Caleb said. "No. She can't just post you like that." "She already did." "Then we answer." Tessa looked at him. "And say what?" "That you're not a failure." Tessa smiled, but it broke before it became real. "People who need proof I'm not a failure were never going to believe me anyway." Caleb slammed the laptop shut. Their mother, Ruth Monroe, sat near the service window, wrapped in a knitted shawl. Her illness had made her smaller over the past year, but not weaker. Ruth had the kind of eyes that could quiet a room without raising her voice. "Baby," Ruth said, "don't explain your life to people who need a crowd before they feel brave." Tessa looked down at her phone again. The video had more than 40,000 views. Madison had tagged the location. People had started leaving laughing emojis on the food truck's page. One comment said, "I'd rather starve." Tessa locked the phone. For a moment, the silence in the truck pressed against all three of them. Then Ruth reached for Tessa's hand. "Late is not lost, baby," she said softly. "Sometimes life is just teaching your roots how to hold." Tessa swallowed the lump in her throat. She wanted to believe that. She had to. Because she had not ended up in that truck by accident. Pause long. She had graduated with honors in business and culinary management. She had worn a navy dress under her gown and cried when Ruth pinned a small silver necklace around her neck. She had applied to every restaurant group, hotel management program, corporate food brand, and hospitality firm she could find. Some never answered. Some said she lacked experience. Some praised her ambition and chose someone with connections. Then Ruth got sick. Then the medical bills arrived. Then Caleb's school fees were due. Then the landlord raised the rent. And one afternoon, while sitting outside a closed diner with a rejection email open on her phone, Tessa saw an old food truck for sale. It was dented, ugly, barely running. The previous owner had painted over the name twice, and both old names still showed through when the sun hit the side. But Tessa saw the flat-top grill. She saw the small sink. She saw wheels. Most people looked at that truck and saw the opposite of success. Tessa saw a door that did not require anyone's permission. Pause medium. She spent almost every dollar she had buying it. She learned permits at midnight, repaired the generator with videos online, built menus in spreadsheets, negotiated with suppliers, and tested biscuit recipes until Caleb begged her to stop feeding him breakfast for dinner. She named it Monroe Morning Co. Not because it was impressive, because morning meant beginning again. Every day at 4:15 a.m., Tessa woke before the city. She prepped eggs, chopped vegetables, brewed coffee, packed napkins, checked propane, and drove through streets still blue with darkness. By 6:00, she was parked near office buildings where people in wool coats and polished shoes bought breakfast without knowing she had slept 4 hours. At night, she studied licensing, marketing, cost control, community kitchen models, catering contracts, emergency food access programs. She had a notebook labeled Monroe Safe Table, though no one knew about it except Ruth and Caleb. On the first page, she had written one sentence: "No child leaves hungry." Pause medium. It was not charity in her mind. It was infrastructure, a place where children walking to school could get breakfast if there was no food at home, a place where elderly neighbors could get soup, a place where someone lost, scared, or in trouble could be seen before the world passed them by. But Madison did not film that. Madison filmed the apron, the grease, the sidewalk, the part of Tessa's life that looked easiest to mock. And Madison knew exactly what she was doing, because Madison Blake's life only looked expensive from far away. Online, she was flawless. She posted rooftop dinners, hotel lobbies, airport lounges, white roses in glass vases, champagne flutes near skyline windows, and captions about ambition, feminine power, and never settling. In reality, the bags were borrowed from a luxury rental service. The hotel rooms belonged to men who never introduced her properly. The SUV was leased under Charles Whitaker's company. Her credit cards were close to maxed out. Her apartment looked beautiful only in the corner where she filmed. Madison was terrified of becoming ordinary. And Tessa, with her apron and food truck, had become the perfect thing to point at and say, "At least I am not her." Pause medium. Olivia Grant's life looked different, cleaner, safer. She had married Nathaniel Grant, a wealth management consultant with a careful smile and a beautiful brick home in Lincoln Park. Their photos were elegant, matching coats, holiday cards, Sunday brunches, fresh flowers, a golden retriever named Winston. But inside that house, Olivia had learned to ask permission in ways no one could photograph. Nathaniel chose the restaurants. Nathaniel corrected her stories. Nathaniel approved her outfits. Nathaniel read her messages when he said he was just checking. At parties, he placed one hand on her lower back and guided her like furniture. Olivia laughed at Madison's jokes because it was easier than disagreeing. Easier than becoming the next target. Easier than admitting that the woman in the food truck, tired and mocked and smelling of coffee, might still belong to herself more than Olivia did. That was the first quiet crack in Olivia's perfect life. But it was not enough to make her speak. Pause short. Not yet. Pause long. For the next few weeks, Madison's video followed Tessa like a stain. Old classmates came to the truck pretending they just happened to be nearby. Some ordered coffee and stared. Some whispered. One woman took a selfie with the truck in the background and captioned it, "Stay humble, ladies." Tessa saw it. She felt every cut. Then she did what Madison never expected. Pause short. She got better. She changed the menu. She added rosemary cheddar biscuits, brown sugar oatmeal cups, apple butter toast, turkey sausage wraps, and a pay-it-forward board where customers could buy an extra meal for someone who needed one. She made a small sign and taped it near the window. "If you are hungry and short on cash, ask for the sunrise special. No questions." At first, people thought it was a marketing trick. Then kids started coming. A boy with a backpack too big for his shoulders. Two sisters sharing one pair of gloves. A teenager who pretended he had forgotten his wallet 3 times before Tessa told him, "You don't need a performance to eat here." The truck became known. Not viral known, neighborhood known. Bus drivers waved, teachers stopped by. A crossing guard named Mr. Alvarez brought her weather updates and called her Chef Monroe because he said titles mattered. And every time Tessa was tempted to delete the food truck's page because of Madison's video, someone left a different kind of comment. "My son ate before school because of you." "Thank you. Best coffee near the blue line. She fed my daughter when I couldn't. I will never forget it." Tessa screenshotted those. She kept them in a folder called Reasons. Pause long, 3 months passed. Chicago became colder. The rain turned to sleet. The wind off Lake Michigan cut between buildings like a blade. Holiday lights appeared along streets where men in expensive coats stepped over people sleeping under blankets. And then, one Tuesday morning before sunrise, Tessa heard something behind the truck. At first, she thought it was a stray cat. A scraping sound. Then a breath. Then the soft metallic clink of someone bumping into the milk crate near the back tire. She froze with a tray of biscuit dough in her hands. The lot behind the downtown church was empty except for delivery vans, trash bins, and the orange glow of a street lamp flickering over wet snow. Tessa set the tray down. She grabbed the small flashlight she kept under the counter and stepped out the back door. Hello? Nothing. The wind pushed cold air through her sweatshirt. She moved slowly around the truck. A cardboard box near the wheel shifted. Tessa aimed the flashlight. Pause medium. Two eyes stared back at her. A boy, small, maybe 8 or 9, crouched behind the rear tire with his knees pulled to his chest. His blonde hair was dirty and matted. His coat was too thin for the weather. One cheek was bruised. His lips were cracked. He was shaking so hard the cardboard trembled beneath him. Tessa lowered the flashlight immediately. Hey, she said gently, I'm not going to hurt you. The boy pressed himself farther into the shadow. Tessa did not step closer. She knew fear when she saw it. Not nervousness, not embarrassment. Fear. The kind that makes a child choose freezing pavement over asking for help. She crouched several feet away. My name is Tessa, she said. This is my truck. The boy said nothing. His eyes darted toward the street. A police siren wailed somewhere far away. The boy covered his ears and squeezed his eyes shut. Tessa's stomach tightened. Okay, she whispered. No sirens, no questions. She stood slowly and backed toward the food truck. Inside, she made a sandwich with scrambled eggs and melted cheese, wrapped it halfway in paper, poured warm apple cider into a small cup, and came back out. She placed both on the ground between them. I'm not asking who you are yet, Tessa said. I'm asking whether you're hungry. The boy stared at the sandwich. His hands stayed locked around his knees. Tessa stepped back until she was near the door. You can eat it right there. For several seconds, he did not move. Then hunger defeated fear. Pause short. He grabbed the sandwich with both hands and ate like someone who did not trust the food would remain his if he waited. He took bites too large to chew properly. Crumbs stuck to his coat. His fingers shook around the cider. Tessa looked away just enough to give him dignity. But her mind was racing. No backpack, no hat, no adult, bruise, fear of sirens, avoiding the street. This was not a runaway who had missed breakfast. This was something else. What's your name? She asked after a while. The boy swallowed. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. That's okay, Tessa said. You don't have to tell me yet. A delivery truck rumbled past the alley entrance. The boy flinched so violently that cider spilled over his hand. Tessa grabbed a towel. Before she could hand it to him, 2 men appeared near the street. They were not dressed like police. Both wore dark coats. One had a knit cap pulled low over his forehead. The other held a phone and scanned the sidewalk with irritated focus, like he was searching for something that belonged to him. The boy saw them. The cup fell from his hands. He scrambled backward behind the truck and made a sound Tessa would never forget. Not a scream. A swallowed panic. Pause short. A terror trained to be quiet. Tessa turned her body slightly, blocking the space behind the truck. The taller man spotted her. Morning, he called. Tessa forced her face into the polite exhaustion of a woman running late for work. Morning. You seen a kid around here? He asked. Tessa's pulse slammed against her throat. What kind of kid? Little boy, blonde, blue jacket. Behind her, under the truck's shadow, the child was shaking. Tessa picked up a crate of napkins and pretended to reorganize supplies. Only kids I see are the ones late for school, she said. The man studied her. The other one stepped closer. You sure? Tessa looked up sharply, not afraid, annoyed. The way Chicago service workers look at men who think they can interrupt a morning rush. I've been here since 5, she said. If you want breakfast, window opens in 10. If you want to question me, bring a badge. For one dangerous second, neither man moved. Then the taller one smiled without warmth. Relax, we're just helping his family. Tessa smiled back. Then I hope you find him. The men walked away. Not fast, not far. They crossed the street and stood near a black sedan with tinted windows. Tessa waited until they stopped looking. Then she opened the back door of the truck. "Come inside," she whispered. The boy did not move. "They're across the street," she said. "I can close the door, but you have to move now." That did it. He crawled from behind the tire and stumbled into the truck. Tessa locked the door behind him, flipped the sign in the window to closed, and turned off the outside lights. The boy crouched between the refrigerator and storage shelves, breathing too fast. Tessa knelt beside him. "Listen to me," she said. "I believe you. I don't know what happened, but I believe you." His eyes filled with tears. Tessa took her phone from the counter. She did not call 911 immediately. Not because she did not trust the police, but because the boy had nearly collapsed at the sound of sirens, and the men outside might be watching police scanners or street activity. She needed help. Pause short, but she needed the right kind. She scrolled to a contact saved from months earlier. Laura Hayes, CPD. Detective Laura Hayes had been a regular customer for 6 weeks. Black coffee, no sugar, spinach wrap, always paid for 2 sunrise specials and never said who they were for. Tessa texted one sentence. "I have a scared child in my truck. 2 men are looking for him. I need help without lights or sirens." The reply came in less than 10 seconds. "Lock doors, stay inside, address." Tessa sent it. Then she looked at the boy. "You did good," she said. "You found the right truck." He whispered something. Tessa leaned closer. "What was that?" "My dad," he said, voice cracking. "They said he stopped looking." Tessa's chest tightened. "No," she said firmly. "Good fathers don't stop looking." The boy stared at her like he wanted to believe that, but did not remember how. Outside, the black sedan remained across the street. Inside, the grill cooled. For the first time since opening Monroe Morning Counter, Tessa missed the morning rush on purpose. Customers knocked. Her phone buzzed. A delivery driver called. She ignored all of it, because a hungry child was hiding on her floor, and 2 men without badges were waiting outside. Pause long. 20 minutes later, a gray sedan pulled into the lot. No siren, no flashing lights. Detective Laura Hayes stepped out in a dark coat, her badge hidden until she reached the truck. She was in her 40s, calm-eyed, with the controlled urgency of someone who had seen too much to panic. Tessa opened the door just enough. Laura slipped inside. Her gaze dropped to the boy. Everything about her face changed, though her voice stayed gentle. "Hey there," Laura said. "I'm Laura. I'm not here to take you anywhere you don't feel safe." The boy grabbed Tessa's apron. Laura noticed. She did not ask him to let go. Instead, she took a folded paper from her pocket and showed it to Tessa. It was a missing child flyer. The photo showed a smiling boy in a Navy school sweater. Clean hair, bright eyes, a small gap between his front teeth. Noah Caldwell, age 8. Pause medium. Tessa felt the floor shift beneath her. She had seen the name on news banners, on social media, on city alerts. Noah Caldwell, the only son of Richard Caldwell, founder and CEO of Caldwell Robotics, had disappeared 19 days earlier after leaving a private tutoring center near the Gold Coast. The city had been flooded with searches, press conferences, rumors, and reward offers. Tessa looked down at the boy holding her apron. Noah, not just any missing child. Pause short. "The missing child." Laura's voice lowered. "Tessa," she said, "is this him?" The boy looked at the flyer. Then he whispered, "I want my dad." Laura closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, they were wet. "We're going to get him," she said. Pause medium. The next hour happened in fragments. Backup arrived quietly. The black sedan disappeared before officers could block it in. Laura called in a protective team. Noah refused to leave the truck unless Tessa came with him. So Tessa went. She sat in the back of an unmarked police vehicle with Noah pressed against her side, his small fingers locked around her hand as if she were the last solid thing in the world. At the station, people moved quickly but spoke softly. A child advocate arrived. A doctor examined Noah. Officers asked questions in careful pieces. Tessa gave her statement twice. The two men had come from the east side of the street. One had a scar near his jaw. The sedan was black, maybe a Lincoln, partial plate with a 7. Noah remembered a basement, a room with a blue door, a woman's voice once, men arguing about money, a phone call where someone said, "Caldwell is getting desperate." Every detail made the room colder. Then the hallway outside went silent. Not quiet. Pause short, silent. Tessa looked up. A man had entered the station wearing a charcoal overcoat over a wrinkled white shirt. His hair looked like he had run his hands through it for 19 days. His face was unshaven. His eyes were red, hollow, and fixed on the room where Noah sat. Richard Caldwell did not look like a billionaire. He looked like a father who had been dying in public and breathing only because someone told him he had to. Laura met him at the door. She said something Tessa could not hear. Richard's hand went to the wall. For a second, he could not stand. Then Noah saw him. "Dad?" Richard turned. The sound that came out of him was not a word. Noah ran. Richard dropped to his knees before his son reached him and caught him with both arms. He held him so tightly the room itself seemed to stop. Officers looked away. Laura wiped her face. Tessa pressed one hand to her mouth and tried not to cry. "I looked," Richard whispered into Noah's hair. "I looked everywhere. I never stopped. I swear to you, I never stopped." Noah sobbed against his shoulder. "They said you did." "They lied." Richard held him tighter. "They lied, buddy. I never stopped." Tessa stepped back, suddenly aware of her apron, her worn sneakers, the flower on her sleeve. This was not her moment. This belonged to them. But Noah reached for her. Even from his father's arms, he reached for Tessa. Richard looked at her then. Really looked. And whatever he had expected to see, it was not a tired woman from a food truck standing under fluorescent police station lights, with grease on her cuff and tears in her eyes. He stood slowly, keeping one arm around Noah. "You found my son," he said. Tessa shook her head. "He found the truck." "You protected him." "He was hungry," Tessa said. "That came before his last name." Richard's expression broke. He tried to speak, but grief and gratitude collided in his throat. Finally, he said, "Tell me what you need." Tessa blinked. "What?" "Anything. Money, legal help, security, a new truck, a building, whatever you want." The room seemed to lean toward her. For one wild second, she thought of Ruth's hospital bills, Caleb's college applications, the truck's failing transmission, the winter permits, the debt, the cracked refrigerator door she had taped shut twice. Then she looked at Noah, a child who had been reduced to ransom, leverage, headlines, and fear. She would not let her kindness become another transaction around him. "I didn't stop because he was a Caldwell," she said. "I stopped because he was a child." Richard stared at her. Then he nodded once, slowly, as if accepting that she had just drawn a line money could not cross. "I understand," he said. But he did not forget. Neither did Noah. Pause long, in the weeks that followed, the city learned Noah Caldwell had been found alive. The news reports said he had escaped his captors during a transfer and hidden near a food truck downtown. They did not release every detail because the investigation was ongoing. 2 suspects were later arrested. A third fled the state and was caught in Indiana. The kidnapping had been planned by men connected to a former Caldwell robotics contractor who believed Richard owed him money after a failed partnership. Tessa's name stayed mostly out of the early reports. She preferred it that way. Madison did not. When the news broke, Madison posted a filtered selfie at a charity luncheon with the caption, "So thankful Noah Caldwell is safe. Hug your loved ones." She did not know. Pause short. Not yet. She did not know that the woman she had mocked had been the one to feed him. She did not know that the food truck she called failure had become the first safe place Noah found. She did not know that Richard Caldwell had asked Detective Hayes 3 times for Tessa's full name. And she definitely did not know that an invitation had already been printed. Pause medium. The envelope arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Cream paper. Heavy. Tessa opened it inside the truck between lunch prep and inventory. The Caldwell Foundation invites Ms. Tessa Monroe as an honored guest to the Winter Gala for Missing and Exploited Children. Underneath was a handwritten note. "Noah asked for you. So did I." Richard Caldwell. Tessa read it twice. Then she laughed once, not because it was funny, but because her body did not know what else to do. Caleb snatched the card. "Honored guest?" he said. "Tess, this is Rich. I'm not going." Ruth looked up from her tea. "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not. Those people donate more for table centerpieces than I spend on produce in a month." "Good," Ruth said. "Then they can afford to learn your name." Tessa shook her head. "I don't belong in that room." Ruth's face softened. "You don't go because you need their approval. You go because that child wants to see the woman who made him feel safe." Tessa looked at the invitation again. "Noah asked for you." That was the sentence that stayed. So she went. Pause medium. She did not buy a designer gown. She could not afford one, and she refused to pretend otherwise. She found a simple, deep green dress at a consignment shop, had the hem fixed by Mrs. Alvarez from the apartment downstairs, and wore Ruth's silver necklace from graduation. Caleb said she looked like a CEO who could also beat someone in a knife skills competition. Ruth cried. Tessa told her to stop. Ruth cried harder. Pause long. The night of the gala, snow fell over Chicago in soft, expensive-looking flakes. The event was held inside the Grand Harrington Hotel, a historic building near the river with marble columns, gold lighting, and windows tall enough to make the city look staged. Black cars lined the entrance. Women stepped out in silk, velvet, diamonds. Men adjusted cufflinks and smiled like every room had been built for them. Inside, a string quartet played near a staircase wrapped in white flowers. Servers carried silver trays. Donors stood in circles speaking softly about generosity while checking who was watching. Madison Blake arrived on Charles Whitaker's arm. Charles was 52, wealthy, married, and careful never to appear in Madison's posts unless the angle could pass as accidental. He owned a private equity firm, 3 homes, and the kind of reputation men protect by letting women like Madison believe patience will eventually become legitimacy. Madison wore a red gown she had rented and a diamond bracelet Charles had not bought for her, only loaned. "Remember," Charles murmured as they entered, "no photos of me tonight." Madison's smile tightened. "Of course. You're here as part of the Whitaker Foundation guest list. Don't make it complicated." Complicated. That was what men called women when they wanted access without accountability. But Madison swallowed the insult because the room was full of cameras, money, and people she needed to believe she belonged. Across the ballroom, Olivia Grant entered with Nathaniel. He adjusted her pearl earring before she stepped forward. "Smile less with your teeth," he whispered. Olivia froze, then obeyed. Her navy gown was elegant. Her hair was perfect. Her hand rested lightly on Nathaniel's arm because he preferred it there. Madison spotted her and waved. For a while, they played their roles. Madison laughed near donors. Olivia nodded beside her husband. Charles avoided introducing Madison to anyone over 60. Nathaniel corrected Olivia when she said the wrong board member's name. Then Madison saw Tessa. Pause medium. Tessa had just entered through the front doors. Not through the service hallway, not carrying trays, not wearing an apron. She stood for a moment beneath the chandelier in her simple green dress, holding a small clutch Caleb had borrowed from a neighbor. Her hair was pinned back. Ruth's necklace rested at her throat. She looked nervous, yes, but not ashamed. Madison's face changed. Delight first, then disbelief, then the old cruelty returning like perfume. "Well," Madison said, loud enough for Olivia to hear, "this should be interesting." She crossed the ballroom before Olivia could stop her. Tessa saw her coming. For a moment, the whole room seemed to shrink to the space between them. Madison smiled. "Catering entrance is around the back, Tessa." Tessa looked at Madison's red gown, the borrowed bracelet, the desperation hiding under perfect makeup. Then she said calmly, "I know. I used to use doors like that. Tonight I was invited through the front." Olivia looked down. Madison's smile faltered. Charles approached, frowning. "Madison," he said quietly, "is there a problem?" Before Madison could answer, a woman in an ivory gown stepped beside him. Eleanor Whitaker, Charles's wife, the real one. She was silver-haired, elegant, and terrifying in the way only women with old money and no need to raise their voices can be terrifying. Her eyes moved from Charles to Madison, then to Madison's bracelet. A faint smile touched her mouth. "Charles," Eleanor said, "if you're going to bring your mistakes to charity events, at least don't seat them near my family table." Pause medium. The air vanished from Madison's lungs. Charles went pale. "Eleanor—" "No," Eleanor said softly. "Not here, not tonight. You have embarrassed yourself enough." Madison looked at Charles, waiting for him to defend her. He did not. He stepped half a pace away. Small movement. Devastating meaning. In that half step, Madison understood everything. She had not been chosen. She had been hidden. She had mistaken access for value. Eleanor Whitaker looked at Tessa then, and her expression warmed slightly. "Ms. Monroe," she said, "Richard has been looking for you." Madison's head snapped toward Tessa. "Richard?" she whispered. Tessa did not answer. A staff member appeared beside her. "Ms. Monroe, Mr. Caldwell is ready when you are." Madison stood frozen as Tessa walked away. For a second, she reached for her phone almost by instinct. For years, every humiliation had been something Madison could crop, filter, caption, or bury under another perfect post. A bad night could become a mysterious quote. A rejection could become a lesson about standards. A man hiding her could become a private romance if she angled the camera carefully enough. But for the first time that night, there was nothing she could post that would save her. Charles had disappeared. Eleanor had stayed. And every woman at the table understood exactly what Madison had been pretending not to be. Not chosen, not powerful, not untouchable, just hidden. The bracelet on her wrist suddenly felt less like jewelry and more like evidence. Pause medium, Olivia watched too, but what rose in her chest was not jealousy, it was grief, because Tessa had just done something Olivia had forgotten was possible. She had answered without begging to be liked. Nathaniel leaned toward Olivia. "Don't stare," he said. "It looks unsophisticated." Olivia looked at him. For the first time in years, she did not immediately apologize. Pause long. The lights dimmed. Guests moved toward their tables. At the front of the ballroom, a large screen showed photographs of children reunited with families, emergency shelters, school programs, search teams, hotline volunteers. Then Richard Caldwell walked onto the stage. The applause was immediate, respectful, heavy with the memory of headlines. Richard wore a black tuxedo, but he still looked marked by what had happened. Some grief does not leave when the child comes home. It simply changes rooms inside the body. He stood at the podium and waited until the room quieted. 19 days, he said. No one moved. My son was missing for 19 days. His voice tightened, but he held it. In those 19 days, I learned things I wish no parent ever had to learn. I learned how loud a house can become when one child is not in it. I learned that money can hire investigators, print flyers, fund search teams, and put pressure on powerful people. He paused. But money cannot tuck your child into bed. Money cannot tell him he is safe. Money cannot go back and stand on the sidewalk at the exact moment he needs one adult to see him. Madison sat near the back, rigid. Olivia's eyes filled. Richard continued. On the morning my son was found, he was cold, hungry, terrified. He had escaped men who saw him only as leverage. He hid behind a food truck because he did not know who to trust. A murmur moved through the room. Madison stopped breathing. Richard looked toward the side of the stage. People with money walked past him. People with power didn't see him. But this woman stopped. Pause medium. The spotlight shifted. Tessa stood at the edge of the stage. For a moment, she could not move. Then Noah appeared from behind Richard. Clean now, safe now, wearing a small suit and sneakers because he had refused dress shoes. He ran to Tessa. Not walked, ran. The room watched as Noah Caldwell wrapped both arms around the woman in the green dress and held on like he had that first day in the police station. Tessa closed her eyes and hugged him back. Madison's hand flew to her mouth. Olivia began to cry silently. Richard stepped away from the podium and joined them. This is Tessa Monroe, he said. She did not ask who he belonged to. She asked if he was hungry. The room rose, not politely. Pause short, completely. Hundreds of people stood clapping as Tessa held Noah's hand under the lights. Tessa saw faces blur, diamonds, black tuxedos, white tablecloths, cameras, tears. Then, near the back, she saw Madison, the same woman who had lifted a phone in the rain and called her failure. Now Madison was standing because everyone else was standing, but her face had collapsed under the weight of recognition. She had not filmed Tessa's lowest moment. Pause short. She had filmed the doorway to her purpose. Richard raised a hand, and the applause softened. I asked Tessa how I could repay her, he said. She refused to turn compassion into a transaction. So tonight, with her permission, the Caldwell Foundation is launching the Monroe Safe Table Initiative. Tessa turned to him sharply. He smiled slightly. Not charity, he said, as if answering the worry in her eyes. Partnership. The screen behind him changed. Monroe Safe Table Initiative. No child leaves hungry. Pause medium. Richard continued. This initiative will fund community kitchens, mobile breakfast trucks, safe meal stations, and training programs for small food entrepreneurs in underserved Chicago neighborhoods. These locations will not only feed children, they will be trained safe points where lost, frightened, or endangered children can ask for help. The applause returned, deeper this time. And Monroe Morning Commune, Richard said, will receive the first official catering and operations contract for the program, led by Ms. Monroe herself. Tessa's lips parted. She had imagined this in notebooks no one had seen. A safe table, a truck becoming a network, a meal becoming a signal, a place where no child had to prove they deserved to be fed. Noah squeezed her hand. You said the truck was safe, he whispered. Tessa looked down at him. It was, she whispered back. Richard heard. His eyes shone. And now, he said, there will be more of them. Madison sat down before the applause ended. She could not stand anymore. Charles was gone from the seat beside her. Eleanor had made sure of it. Olivia remained standing. Nathaniel tugged lightly at her wrist. Sit down, he whispered. Olivia pulled her hand away. It was not dramatic. No one noticed. But inside Olivia, something locked for years opened a fraction. Pause long. After the gala, snow fell harder. Guests gathered under the hotel awning while valets brought cars around. Cameras flashed. Donors congratulated Richard. Noah refused to leave until he got to say goodbye to Tessa twice. Tessa stepped outside for air. The cold hit her face, clean and sharp. She stood near a stone planter looking at the city. Across the river, lights burned in corporate towers where she had once imagined herself working. For years, she had thought not entering those buildings meant she had failed. Now she wondered if life had simply rerouted her to the sidewalk where she was needed most. Behind her, someone said, "Tessa." She turned. Madison stood there without Charles, without the borrowed confidence, without the performance. Her makeup had smudged slightly under one eye. Olivia stood a few steps behind her, arms wrapped around herself. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Madison said, "I didn't know." Tessa looked at her. Madison swallowed. "I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know that boy would—" "That's not what you're apologizing for," Tessa said. Madison flinched. Tessa's voice stayed calm. "You didn't mock me because you knew the future. You mocked me because you thought the present made me smaller than you." Madison's eyes filled. "I thought you were behind." Tessa nodded slowly. "I was never behind, Madison. I was just somewhere you didn't respect." Pause medium. The words landed harder than anger would have. Madison looked down at the snow collecting on her heels. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't even know who I am without people thinking I'm impressive." For the first time, Tessa saw the fear underneath Madison's cruelty. Not enough to erase what she had done, but enough to make her human. Olivia stepped forward. "I laughed," she said, voice trembling. "I didn't want to, but I did." Tessa looked at her. Olivia wiped her cheek. "I think I was scared that if I defended you, Madison would look at my life too closely. And I couldn't let anyone look too closely." From inside the hotel, Nathaniel's voice called, "Olivia, car's here." Olivia did not turn around. Tessa understood then. The perfect photos, the careful smile, the silence. Everybody was trapped by something. Madison by status, Olivia by appearance, Tessa, for a while, by shame. But only one of them had stopped pretending long enough to build something real. Tessa looked at both women and said, "Everybody was trying to arrive first. Nobody stopped to ask if they were arriving whole." Madison cried then, quietly. Olivia did too. Tessa did not hug them, not because she hated them, because forgiveness, like success, did not need to perform on command. She simply said, "I hope you both get honest before life forces you to." Then she walked toward the waiting car Richard had arranged to take her home. This time, when she entered through the front, she did not look back. Pause long. 1 year later, the original Monroe morning Cumber truck still parked near the same corner on Tuesdays. It looked different now. Fresh white paint, deep green lettering, a small gold sunrise painted near the service window. On the side, beneath the logo, were the words, "Monroe Safe Table. No child leaves hungry." There were 3 more trucks across Chicago, one near a school, one near a shelter, one near a community clinic. And the first Monroe Safe Table kitchen had opened in a renovated brick building that used to be an abandoned convenience store. Now it had long wooden tables, warm lights, a training kitchen, a counseling office, and a small sign near the entrance that said, "Hungry children eat first. Questions can wait." Pause medium. Caleb got into college with a partial scholarship. At his graduation dinner, he told everyone he was studying public policy because somebody has to make sure people like my sister stop having to save the world with duct tape and spreadsheets. Ruth's health improved enough for her to spend afternoons at the kitchen, sitting near the window with tea, greeting children like every one of them had been expected. Madison disappeared from social media for months. When she returned, the posts were quieter. No rented champagne, no borrowed cars, no captions about winning, Just small, honest pieces of a woman learning how to live without applause. Olivia left Nathaniel that spring, quietly, carefully. For the first time in years, she chose a life no one had approved for her. But the heart of the story stayed where it had always been, at the window of a food truck, at a warm table, in the hands of a woman who had once been mocked for serving breakfast. Pause long. As for Noah, he came every first Saturday with Richard. Security stayed nearby, but not too close. Noah was taller now. His hair was neat. His laugh had returned in pieces. He still ordered the same sandwich from the morning Tessa found him. Egg, cheddar, no hot sauce, apple cider if it was cold. One Saturday, while snow drifted softly outside the kitchen windows, Noah sat at the counter watching Tessa work. "Do you ever miss when it was just the truck?" he asked. Tessa smiled. "Sometimes." "Why?" "It was smaller, quieter." Noah thought about that. But if it stayed small, other kids wouldn't know where to go. Tessa looked at him. "That's true." He took a bite of his sandwich, then he said, "I'm glad Madison made the video." Tessa blinked. "You are?" Noah nodded. "Because then people knew where the truck was." Pause medium. Tessa stood very still. She'd spent so long remembering that video as a wound. She had forgotten wounds could become maps. Pause long. That evening, after the kitchen closed, Tessa returned to the original truck. The city was cold, bright, and restless around her. Office workers hurried toward trains. Buses sighed at curbs. Somewhere, someone laughed too loudly into a phone. Somewhere else, someone walked home hungry and hoped no one noticed. Tessa wiped down the counter, turned off the grill, counted the remaining sandwiches, and packed them for the shelter drop-off. Then she stepped outside and looked at the sign on the truck. Monroe Safe Table. No child leaves hungry. Rain had once hit that metal while Madison laughed. A frightened boy had once hidden behind its back tire. Tessa had once stood inside it, wondering if the world had passed her by. Now children knew the logo, parents knew the address, detectives knew the protocol. And the woman they called a failure had built something the city needed. Tessa locked the truck and rested one hand against the cold metal. She thought of Madison's phone, Olivia's silence, Ruth's voice, Caleb's anger, Noah's hand gripping her apron, Richard's words on stage. Then she smiled softly and walked toward the kitchen lights still glowing down the block. Pause medium. Some people bloom early, some bloom loudly, but some bloom quietly in places nobody respects, until the day the whole world realizes they were never late. Pause short. They were being planted.